Hey, superhero, welcome to the show. If you're a newbie, thanks for coming by. It's always nice to have a new face in the crowd. And if you're a returning viewer, we love you. I hope you've subscribed because you know what a big deal that is. I want to refer to you in this episode as a superhero because you are a superhero. And if you think that's hyperbole, consider this. Superman flies, Shazam flies, the Human Torch flies, Wonder Woman has an invisible jet. Let's face it, people who fly are superheroes, and superheroes have superpowers. But superpowers need to be honed. They don't just happen. You have to work at it. I mean, let's face it, you don't want to be the superhero who accidentally burns a hole through your neighbor's house because your x-ray vision got out of whack. So consider Uncle Ben's advice when you fly and exercise your superpowers. With great power comes great responsibility. Now, of course, that's not the Uncle Ben on the rice box at the supermarket. That's Uncle Ben from Peter Parker, Spider-Man, superhero. You kind of get where I'm going with this? The overarching point is, for some superheroes, their mission is to save the world. Yours is just to be safe. So let's think about that. The superpower you want to consider working on first, and this is a biggie, it's judgment. Now, you might not think of judgment as a superpower, but it is. This isn't just hyperbole, and I can prove it. If you think judgment just comes to you, go hand $1,000 to a teenager and see how well they spend it. Or lend them your brand new sports car and see if it comes back without any dents or scratches. You won't do that because teenagers have lousy judgment. And no, I'm not dumping on teenagers. I was a teenager, and when I was a teenager, damn, I was stupid. Just like all teenagers, it's the way it is. We can improve, though. Every single one of us can improve our superpower of judgment just by thinking about it, talking to other people, maybe do a little reading now and then, and consider what kind of things might trip me up so that in advance, I have a sense of what good judgment looks like. Because good judgment is a superpower. Bad judgment, you don't want that. You might relate judgment and good judgment to the go, no-go decision. And one of the big mistakes people make, people who fly, superheroes just like you, they forget that go, no-go decision doesn't end when we get in the airplane and fire it up. It continues throughout the flight, all the way to the flight until we're shut down at the other end. We're thinking about the go, no-go decision-making process, and we're looking for the opportunity to say no. Weather is one of the big components that comes into play when we do our go, no-go decision-making. Well, if it's not so bad, but it's not great, the ceiling's a little low, and the temperature and dew point spread is closing, if you're leaving the traffic pattern, that might be a bad idea. That's an example of where we have to correlate some things together and say, it does look nice, and the wind's not high, and it's not raining or snowing or sleeting, but if the ceiling's only at 1,500 and it looks like it's coming down, I probably don't want to go anywhere. That is good decision making. How about the condition of the aircraft itself? Did you find a dent in an aileron where somebody whacked it into a hangar wall when they were pushing it in? A damaged flight control, a damaged primary flight control automatically renders the airplane unairworthy. That has to get taken care of. Did you see a fabrics patch showing on one of the tires? And you say, well, it's holding air. It is now, but when you touch back down, if that fabric patch is what touches the ground first, you might end up with a flat tire. That's good judgment. That's good decision making. That's using your pilot superpowers to say, I can see into the future. The likelihood of this becoming a problem is higher than I want. So let's not do that. How about aircraft performance? This one, we do that run up on every flight and we can just get into the habit and we're just, everything's fine. I know a pilot who flew an airplane for a year, from annual to annual, an entire year, and every time they did a mag check, there was no drop. Both mags, left mag, right mag, same setting on the tack. That shouldn't happen, but they were so used to just doing it, and what are they looking for? A big mag drop, where one mag is very different than the other, and it never occurred to them, if I'm not getting a mag drop, I'm not running the way I should be. Either I'm on one mag all the time or I'm on both mags all the time, but that key, that switch isn't doing anything. This indicates a problem, and our judgment should come into play and say, that's not right. Even if I don't know why it's not right, it's not right. Let's go talk to maintenance and get this figured out before we fly. Imagine if it was just one mag you're flying on and that mag fails in flight. This is going to get really exciting really quickly, and there's not much you can do about it in the air. On the ground, you could have by using your pilot superpower of judgment. What about health? Your health, the passenger's health. Health matters, and it doesn't have to be something catastrophic like you've got typhoid fever. Yeah, you should probably stay home. Do you have a stuffy nose and runny eyes and your ears are kind of feeling plugged up? Do you really want to go flying with that? Because if you end up having to do an emergency descent, that might be very uncomfortable. If you do a big enough emergency descent from enough altitude, you might even rupture an eardrum. If you're not feeling well, if your passenger isn't feeling well, if maybe that breakfast was a little greasier than it should have been and your stomach's not feeling great, this might be a terrific time to say, let's just hold off for a bit. Let's use that pilot superpower of good judgment and not commit to something where we're in a tight space, bouncing around in a hot, enclosed atmosphere where the results of that greasy breakfast might be really, really unpleasant. You even have to consider geography. I'm lucky enough to live on a sandbar, and I love it here. Florida is just a great place for flight training, going to the beach, going to the theme parks. It's awesome. But there are towers that go up to a couple thousand feet, and we have to be aware of those. Out west, where I originally came from, there are mountains. When you're leaving an airport in mountainous terrain, you have to, before you get in the airplane, kick in that superpower of judgment and think about what's my route out of here, and it may not be in the direction of your destination initially. You may need to follow a path that takes you away from the mountains and the rising terrain until you get enough altitude to turn on course. Not everything is a straight line from A to B. And speaking of A and B, always have a plan B, maybe even a plan C for every phase of your flight. If things aren't going well because the weather starts to turn, the airplane starts to act up, your passenger doesn't feel good, you don't feel good, whatever the situation is, you always want to have pre-planned, what am I going to do if? Because that day will come, and trust me, if you haven't prepared for it, you're not going to like the way it feels. And keep in mind, just because you plan to flight from A to B and you decide you have to divert, that doesn't mean you're a failure. That means you're a success. That means you made the decision that keeps you and your passengers safe. Military pilots, airline pilots plan diversions for their flights all the time, and when the situation warrants, they divert. So be like the pros. Go ahead and plan on having a plan B, maybe even a plan C, and be willing to divert. Be willing to dispense with your original plan and head off in a new pre-planned direction that keeps you safe. That's how you become the real superhero, because your passengers are like, they can fly. They know what they're doing. They're awesome. Just while you're up there, make sure you use an ADS-B, because Wonder Woman's jet is invisible. And if you don't have the ADS-B on, you could be very surprised. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. We're going to keep talking about this because as a pilot, you are a superhero. You do have superpowers, but they need to be honed to a razor edge. You can do that as long as you're consciously thinking about it. So click like on this video. Leave a comment down below. Where have you used your superior judgment to keep you out of a problem that would have been really unpleasant? And of course, subscribe to the channel because it just makes me so darn happy. We'll see you next time, right back here on MadPropsAero.